Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now, we are joined by Brian's Logic, Arthur B. Flat, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hey, how are things?
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good morning for some, good evening for others. Hello, welcome one and all. It's good to have you. Say hello from Discord. Let everybody know that you are actually alive and you're not just pretend little stickers I have on the show.
Live from Discord.
Live from Discord, it's Duncan, proving he's real. Thank you very much, Duncan. And again, one more time.
Hakuna Matata
Hakuna Matata.
from Discord.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
What a wonderful phrase.
Let's not get into it. We'll get a Disney copyright. Let's not do this. Hello, Arwin. Good to have you.
Disney copyright.
Yeah, well, if you start singing Hakuna Matata, what do you want?
That's only if we take the recording of the song by Disney. We can actually just sing it ourselves.
Oh, I'm trusting that just singing it ourselves would be so accurate that it would set the copyright algorithm off immediately because we're so tone perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Meanwhile, is there any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Over there.
Well, what is the distance to the sun that we're given? What is that based on? It's based on the need for the sun to be something very big and at a great distance for us to receive almost parallel light rays from it that allows us then to live on a globe where the shadows we see in reality are explained by the fact that it's claimed that this sun is very big and far away, giving us almost parallel light rays hitting the globe. So that's why the sun is claimed to be big and far away. But is that a measurement of size and distance?
How would you know if the shadows are parallel?
Well, this the thing about it. It's like you're not going to know that. Like it's like the shadows we see in reality. The shadows we see in reality. They needed to be explained, and they believed we live on a globe. So Eratosthenes said, "Well, as I've just measured the Earth flat with a 500-mile elevation angle, I now need to, you know what I mean, up my game here." So he said, if the sun is really big and far away, then that explains the shadow that I just used as the starting point of my elevation angle. That involved a 500-mile horizontal distance along the Earth.
Oh, he couldn't have got that angle off a curve, though.
Well, that's the point.
Just got to interrupt. Really sorry, Brian. Hands up who's done primary source research on Eratosthenes.
I have.
How far did you go back?
To whatever information was there. I mean, what do you mean by go back?
Okay, first and foremost, what was the primary source? Not Eratosthenes, that's for damn sure.
Just whatever I could find about the official story online.
But that's not doing primary source research. You're having a laugh.
Well, I suppose it's not primary source research. I can't really reference Eratosthenes, but I do know.
Don't get me wrong. Let's rephrase that, because if you find somebody's scanned in a 300-year-old copy of blah, blah, blah that has been handed down from XYZ in the references that talks about something 1,000 years ago, I'll go, okay, so you went back to a source that described this not first-hand 300 years ago. That would be my standard. Now, whether or not you get that from in the internet or not is not really relevant. I'm just saying, you know, the way you phrased it was such that you've done a bit of Googling and you found your way to what information's online about Eratosthenes and you're calling that primary source research. Well, no, that's woefully lacking. Anybody else?
But you can't do primary source research on Eratosthenes.
Well, that's a much better answer. Why would that be?
Yeah, well, because the historian wrote about him before he was born.
Excuse me, did I hear Brian's voice change? What's happening? Did he suddenly become foreign?
This is my Dutch voice.
I was going to say, suddenly Brian's become much more foreign than... I said the other day, right, I was going to post something to Brian, and I was like, well, it's Ireland. It's not like it's going abroad. It's Ireland. And Brian was like, no, it is abroad. I'm like, yeah, it is, isn't it? You bloody foreigner. So then I went down to my tech shop and told my tech guy about the problem Brian's having, and he just happened to have a whole bunch of Macs with exactly the same problem with the graphics card that's not soldered onto the chip. And then I'd left the conversation, said I'd pass on contact info. Then when I told Brian that, I went on to say, I didn't mention you're Irish, meaning foreign, you know, so he might not be cool with it. Anyway, that joke aside. Arwin, let Brian actually answer my question. Why would it be difficult to do primary source research on Eratosthenes, Brian?
I think, as far as I know, the first information concerning Eratosthenes didn't turn up until the late 70s. So that's
now
why
we're getting somewhere.
I can't verify that it actually happened or that he existed.
Right, but I'm not. Let's not leave it in such a manner that it just seems like you're just rubbish at doing primary source research, because that may very well be the case. Has anybody actually tried to go back and find old documents or found where the trail ends for when this story, which is all it is, light must be coming in parallel. So if I think of it coming to the center of a sphere Earth, the lines that I'm using off a flat plane that Brian described at the beginning, chuckling, will mean it's curved. You know, that story must originate somewhere. And I just wondered how far someone, if anyone, had gone back to see when did this story start being told. Now, I can pretty much concur from my own looking into this, but yeah, go back to the 70s and you can find stories. But I'm saying beyond that, which is scraping the surface, let's be honest, Brian, anybody else? Arwin, as you were so keen, let's see what you've got to add rather than stealing Brian's thunder.
Do I need to repeat it? I mean, from what I heard, even somebody was inquiring Chat GPT about it even, and asking for the sources of this Eratosthenes, was it? And it turned out that the historian that was actually used for the source to write about him wrote about his life before he was born in the linear timeline, which makes it totally paradoxical, but the Chat GPT refused to recognize that.
Okay,
and so that is it.
You've opened a can of worms, which is interesting, which is to say, okay, you decide that you're going to do this primary source research on Eratosthenes, and you go to Chat GPT, and ask it, how far do the records go back? What's the earliest reference? And then you read it off Chat GPT. If that's where it stopped, I'd be like slapping your wrists. Whereas if you actually went and verified that what Chat GPT had provided you was a genuine source, you know, it did exist, and there were actually like first editions that existed that were printed in that year and things like that. In other words, you didn't just take it as read, because otherwise, if we all just follow the idea that, well, primary source research means typing it into Chat GPT rather than Google, then again, I'm slapping my own head here.
That's a fair assessment. I mean, but I'm pretty sure that Chat GPT can actually, when inquired, source its information, and then
I don't dispute that. Yeah, okay, I don't dispute that. Let's not get into this wrangle dangle. All we're asking for is a distance to the sun, for heaven's sake.
Right, and I'm not challenging the rhetoric that we're given on Google. I'm just pointing out that even parallel rays, and there's amazing distances they claim, require a plane to measure the angles to claim they're parallel to give you those distances to begin with.
Right on. Speaking of which, any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline? That is to say, if the Earth was a sphere and had a curve to it, how would you acquire an elevation angle measurement to, well, let's say navigate with?
You couldn't.
You couldn't. Earth has to be flat to navigate.
Well, Earth would have to be flat to establish a horizontal.
You just use a plumb bob and that's it, right? You'd have a string and a weight pointing at the center of the sphere Earth, and that's it. You can't really get a baseline. That doesn't even exist. We wouldn't have a definition of baseline.
Those two things aren't connected.
Because the Earth is a sphere.
Hold on, stop. Those two things aren't connected. You dangle a plumb because what? You're going to employ the geometric principle and say that with respect to the line that you've dropped, you've got a horizontal with respect to that line. Okay, that's in isolation. Fine. But then you started talking about a ball Earth beneath you with the plumb moving to the center of it. You're like, what the hell's that got to do with anything? If you're going to establish a horizontal by using a plumb, then with respect to that plumb, every line that comes off it must be horizontal if you're going to reference that particular plumb line to give you horizontal. That's nothing to do with the Earth. That's everything to do with you dangling a plumb and then just stating that after the fact there's a sphere Earth below it. That means nothing. Those two things are they're not connected.
Hold on. You said that specifically on a globe Earth. So I'm giving you how it works on a globe Earth.
Not on, or not to, but from. That is to say, by way of utilization of the surface of a presumed to be sphere, get your elevation angle measurement from that curved surface. Not get your horizontal from something with respect to a plumb bob. No, because that's got nothing to do with the ground, and that's what we're discussing.
Oh, you can't do that.
It goes if you're using the horizon. I mean, you can't use a plumb bob on the sphere.
He's not. He's using a plumb. What are you talking about? Stop. He's not. Hold on. You're doing it to him now. Just hold on, Brian. He's not doing that. He's not using the horizon. He's using a plumb bob.
Right, but he invoked vertical when he said.
Everyone else, can you just let Arwin defend his position, which he'll do badly? Go ahead, Arwin.
Yeah, you can't use all that on a sphere. So if you were on a sphere, you wouldn't even be asking that question.
Yeah, I would. If we are presumed to be on a sphere by the vast majority of the Western world, and therefore I absolutely am asking that question and describing how you can just acquire a horizontal and then describing how it works with respect to a presupposed sphere is totally moot. It's not relevant when I'm asking specifically with respect to a curved ground you, the Western world, assume you are on. How would you acquire an elevation angle with respect to that curved ground? Not just how you'd acquire horizontal, which is what you're doing with a plumb.
You wouldn't on a sphere, and the horizon, quite frankly, wouldn't be geometrically relevant to anything that you do if you would live on a sphere.
Spot on. Ah, excellent. That was a much better conclusion. But John and Brian have got something to add, I'm sure, before I move on. Go ahead, Brian, then John. Or John, then Brian. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whichever leaves the least dead air.
Yeah, I had to get gloves off me because you wouldn't leave me talk, so I went down. No, you can't.
Try that once more. I had plumb bob in that. The rest was all too Irish.
Okay, you can't do anything with a plumb bob if you're claiming the Earth as a sphere. Because if I hold a plumb bob up to the horizon, then the horizon is the perpendicular horizontal to that vertical plumb bob. The plumb bob is the vertical perpendicular to the horizon. The two of them create perpendicular. You can't have one without the other. Now, let me ask you a question. Is the horizon a tangent plane?
No.
Right. That's the end of that then. Every time you use the plumb bob and you're using the horizon, you're referencing a horizontal plane. That's the way it is.
I got that, but you've got to use it in conjunction, and Arwin has now segued into that anyway, so we're fine. But at the point that Arwin just made the declaration of, well, I just dangle a plumb bob, assume it's moving to the centre of a sphere Earth, and then I can acquire horizontal with respect to my plumb bob, and I've already incorporated a presupposed spherical Earth that the line dangles to the centre of. Well, at that point, he hadn't utilised the horizon. He's going to be using it when you're navigating around, doing anything with things, building stuff, basically anything functional. Then, yes, it's going to be with respect to the ground and with respect to the horizon, which derives your horizontal planes. Well, yes, but at that point he hadn't. Now we have. And anything that the globe Earth's going to claim is going to be respect to something that's already established, datums, or sea level, or something else in the distance that's already been referenced with its height if you're referring to it. And it will be referenced to sea level also.
You can't have that. You can't have divergent plumbs. Like, if plumb is created vertical, then they can't be divergent. Go on, John.
Well, the thing is, when he said dangle a plumb bob to get your vertical, that's where he snuck it in, because vertical is always in reference to the horizontal orientation, right? Orientation deals with the ground when you're talking about vertical. So,
well, not if you lived on a sphere.
Owen, let me hear how sneaky you've been. Go ahead, John.
right. So tying the plumb bob to vertical, but never explicitly stating that he will be referencing the ground by using the word vertical is the trick that they use to try to claim elevation angles.
Gotcha. I didn't spot that bit, but I knew what he was doing. Good. And good Arwin, ultimately the purveyor of this magic trick. You know, kudos to you, ultimately, Arwin. I know you want to sneak in and try and decry the people pulling it apart, because you've learned how to effectively utilize this trick, which is awesome. For a baller.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how it would actually work if you lived on a ball, right? And it's like how incredibly surreal that it would be. You wouldn't have the horizon. The horizon would just be like, oh, that's just what you can't see because stuff is in front of it.
It's very glass half full of you.
Anything.
It's very glass half full to say, well, I'm trying to figure out how you would mentally do the gymnastics to end up at a ball, and that's how you cognitively go through it to try and functionally make it work, which always means there's a slight globe-based positive spin that you put on it while you're going through that mental process with us. But it's very useful because it means that we get to pull it apart, not only in terms of how you're trying to, you're trying to mentally advantage yourself by understanding how it works. That's why you're phrasing it the way you are. But it means we have something to brace against. Therefore, you're going to be, not talking over because you want to win the argument, but explaining how you're doing your mental processing. It's all very useful. I've got such a great panel. But in this instance, you get most of the props because you were the one who snuck it in. We just pulled it apart.
And no,
but Nathan, there's a
Arwin, then Brian. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. I'm just saying, no problem. I like doing this. I'm glad you guys are appreciating it.
I'm having fun. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a deeper issue here, and I've tried to highlight it in the past too. And John has been trying to highlight it. You can't hold a plumb bob in your sitting room now, and I can't hold a plumb bob in my house now, and the two of them not be parallel if we're both claiming they're vertical. If I'm claiming my plumb bob is creating a vertical, and you're claiming your plumb bob is creating a vertical, then they must be parallel. They cannot be divergent. Because if they're divergent, then which one of them is
I got it.
They're both supposed to reference a horizontal.
Well, that's what I was going to add, because John got there first, but your addition to John's point in that regard is perfect. It's like, if you're going to claim that you've got that vertical, it's in reference to the orientation. Well, that's in reference to the ground. Now, if you've also, and you're adding this, and that's a great addition, saying, well, if you're also dangling a plumb bob, well, then you're also employing that same principle John went through. Therefore, they must be parallel. That's just the fact of life that we deal with when we dangle plumb bobs. Now, what does this all mean in reference to the ground? Well, it means that both people are referencing horizontal. The ground must be horizontal. There is no other way for this to work. The world we inhabit functionally is horizontal, and those are the principles that are employed. Now, what Brian is doing and what John has done initially, after taking apart Arwin's admission that he's employing the ground without saying it when he just drops a plumb line, very clever, is pointing out these very basic principles. They're only basic principles, aren't they? But we're linking them back to how that works with the ground if the ground was curving, and it wouldn't work anymore. That's the point. So it seems like, if you just tuned in at a certain section, you go, well, they're just talking about basic principles, right? Stuff being parallel. Wowee. Yeah, but that is in direct reference to the ground, and that's how it works. The ground, the reference of our territory, how we inhabit our environment, is flat. Or to put it another way, Earth is flat. That's how we deal with Earth. That's how it functions. And a lot of the principles we have derived have come from working the Earth and using the Earth and navigating the Earth. And then we get to simplify them into these principles, like parallel, as Brian's described, or as orientation has been described by John. Now, understanding those principles into a way we can linguistically describe them to one another, again, why would those things come about linguistically? Because they have a useful practical application for one person to communicate with another about the environment that they are inhabiting, which is flat. Earth is flat. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Nathan, hang on, before you go.
Oh, I thought we concluded. I gave everybody a chance. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. I need to make a point here, right? When you are claiming a vertical in Leamington, and I'm claiming a vertical in Waterford, and that means we're both referencing horizontal. That means you have a horizontal and I have a horizontal. Now, if you're at a different elevation above sea level than I am, that means we both have parallel horizontals, right? The two horizontal lines, they're a constant. They have no measure. They have no limit to their size, but they're just lines that are parallel to each other based off of the main horizontal, which is mean sea level. Now, when Bev, right, this is why Bev tries to attack people geometrically and say that Earth is not flat. It's because the horizontal you're referencing and horizontal I'm referencing are parallel lines. So parallel horizontals means the Earth can't be a flat plane if you were to treat flat as a geometric plane.
One more time.
As a description.
I don't understand. No. Parallel horizons
horizontal.
Meaning you can't have a flat. That sounds arse about face. That sounds wrong.
Yeah, but no, he's talking about from a surveying point of view. If the horizontal you're referencing with your Plumb bob and the horizontal I'm referencing with my Plumb bob, if their elevations are different elevations above mean sea level, that means that, there is also mean sea level. That means there's elevations. When he says that means the Earth.
Sorry,
is
I got
flat,
it now. What you're dressing up in a fancy way is saying if there's a topology change, Earth can't be flat. And strictly speaking, Earth not being completely smooth, as Sleeping Warrior likes to phrase it, he'd be correct.
No.
Why not?
No.
Hold on. Why not?
Because
there's topology. In that respect, if I pick one point and say that I've dropped a Plumb bob and I've got my reference to sea level, you do it over there and it's a slightly different elevation, then obviously the principle is still the same that both run parallel. However, you're a different elevation to me. So how can you describe the slope between the two of us defies the fact that it's flat in that specific description of the lay of the land? Every point is slightly different to every other point. As an overall reference, as an overall plane is the only other word I can use, it's all flat. There's no description that can describe anything else to give you a reference to describe how high I am respect to you. But the fact that we are at different elevations does quite literally defy flatness because there's a difference in elevation. Therefore, he's correct.
No, he's not. Because you're at the falling into the trap that a lot of people fall into with this situation. Is to start looking at it because he fell into his own trap in a way because he started holding people to a geometric standard. Flat is a descriptor. It is not a geometric claim. You will not find flat described and detailed in Euclid's Elements, for instance, or from Eratosthenes, or from Pythagoras.
Fine. I don't mind. I could go through the whole thing again and say level, or I could go through the same thing and say horizontal if you prefer. I don't mind substituting in my language if you would prefer me to.
No, leave me finish.
Okay.
When you look at the definitions for flat, the synonyms of flat are level, horizontal, right? Because horizontal has to be flat, right? But also smooth. But what is smooth? Smooth is touch sensitive. How do you determine if something is smooth? There's nothing in the earth. There's absolutely nothing in reality that is 100% smooth. Smooth is touch sensitive. Now, if you take the full expanse of the latitude and longitude grid, and you take the full height of Mount Everest, then its height above mean sea level would be equivalent to, if you were to scale it down, then that would make Mount Everest half the height of a human hair, less than half the height of a human hair. Now, if you rub a hand across a table, a lot of wooden tables, there's many undulations, but you don't feel them because you have undulations on your hand, so it feels smooth. So undulations doesn't change the description, because my table is undulations, but that doesn't mean I have any other better way of describing it.
That's a good way of describing it, yes. And Morgile, shout out to him, did this originally when he first critiqued flat earthers for taking Neil deGrasse Tyson out of context with a very similar description. He then went on to describe how he would do it like you just did it, and I'm going to do it like Morgile did it. So shout out, because that's where this has come from. But originally, Neil deGrasse Tyson's explaining Earth with a scale of I think he used a bowling ball. Anyway, what he's describing is how much chubbier Earth is at the bottom, and he specifically states that it's pear-shaped. Now, that is the cut-off point in the edit for a flat earther back in 2016 or 17, where they were taking this and saying, look, he says it's pear-shaped, and then they'd flash up some stupid pear-shaped Earth meme to go alongside it. However, what he went on to say was, if the Earth was the scale of a bowling ball, and you were to run your fingers over the said bowling ball scale Earth, then you wouldn't feel a thing. It would be like a bowling ball, perfectly smooth. There'd be nothing to it. Now, at the microscopic level, there's obviously massive undulations and great big imperfections at the microscopic level. But to you at that scale, it's perfectly smooth. Now, that is directly after saying it's pear-shaped. Perfectly smooth, and I believe he said perfectly spherical to you. In other words, you're not going to notice what he described as being ever so slightly bigger at the bottom in his bullshit world of sphere Earth in a sky vacuum. The point being, at that scale, for a ball Earth, if you can imagine that amount of land, albeit wrapped around a sphere, he's saying when shrunk down to the point that you could actually hold it all at once, he's got the whole world. Anyway, it would be smooth. Now, Morgile went on to say, if you were to describe the plane of the existence that we know, because it's been mapped, and you were to lay it out at roughly the same scale, you know, a map that's about yay big, you can fit it within your arm's length, then it, if it had every mountain perfectly laid out to scale on this map, in other words, all the little mountains, when this map's laid out, do actually poke up out of the ground or the table that the map's laid on to represent how high they would be at scale on this table. And you ran your hand over that, like Neil deGrasse Tyson's description of the ball, it would be perfectly smooth. That is to say, it would be perfectly flat. Thank you, Brian. Worthy addition. I was going to get annoyed with you, but I'm not going to. Let's move on.
Well,
Any
see, that's even...
Oh, he's got more. He's got more.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I have more, yeah. This is more.
Well, I
more
was just going to
after
say that's a red herring. Yeah, I was just going to say that's a red herring because mean sea level is perfectly smooth and flat. That is what you are referencing when you talk about differing sea levels is in reference to mean sea level.
In trouble.
So it is perfectly smooth and flat. It is a red herring.
You've given your own disclaimer that it does your own argument. What does mean? Oh, that's a terrible question.
It's the average. It's the average of sea levels.
It's an average, perfect.
That number that you come to after the average, yes.
That's just the number that you've come to after the average. How can you tell me that that is something perfectly flat with reference to Earth? It isn't. You can't have that standard, especially when you throw in the disclaimer of mean sea level.
It is perfectly flat.
Yeah, the reference you come to after measuring. Let me just get to the end. After you measure all these different points and then average them, you say that the plane it creates overall to reference is perfectly flat. Yeah, that's true. But what you've then created is a methodology, not a concept. I can't think of the right word. You've created...
It's contradictory.
It is contradictory.
No, it's not.
Yes,
No,
it
it's
is.
not. Because
I understand.
hold on a sec. If I measure 20 planes, right, that I reference as sea level, and those 20 planes come to a set point of a vertical datum when you add them all together and divide by the number that you used, and you use that line conceptually to measure altitude from, it is a constant, it is smooth, it is perfectly flat.
Yes,
That is just
correct.
Yeah,
That is let me just answer him. Yes, that's correct. But what you've created is a convention, and that isn't the ground anymore. The points you measured were to average.
right. And when you say that the table is smooth, the undulations you're going to describe at the microscopic level are within that convention of smoothness you have just described.
Correct.
So
Perfectly correct.
Or
Yes.
lower?
Yes, that's correct also.
Right.
But strictly speaking, while I say with using, as Brian described very well when he described the synonyms, how smooth something is a description of touch. Would you not agree?
Well, then that word is incorrect when you're describing the world.
No, it is. It is when I run my hands over a scale model of it, and it's no longer the ground either. Yeah, we're one step.
So when you run your hand over
John, hold on, Brian. I will come to you. I'll come back to you. I promise. Go ahead, John.
So when you run your hand over a map, it is perfectly flat. Yes, I agree.
Yep. But to say that is the ground is a reification fallacy. We're one step away from that. We're right on the edge because we're using it to describe these conventions and how they reference the world and how that derivative reference to the ground is definitely not sphere-shaped, but we're right on the edge of reification. Now, often we'll get accused of said reification by people like Bev, and that's why we're discussing this. We've gone on to it. We haven't got onto gravity because of it, which is fine. But we have to skirt the line of reification without stepping over it. And it's not often you don't get high praise. But to say that that is perfectly flat and therefore tie it to how the ground is perfectly flat, Bev would have you for that, John.
No, I ain't saying the ground is perfectly flat. I'm saying the baseline that you will measure the ground against is perfectly flat.
Agreed.
They will not have it for that.
Yeah, agreed. John, go ahead, Brian.
And you can define that. If you were going to conceptualize it as being a giant, that would be perfectly smooth.
Yeah, if you were to, correct, if you were to conceptualize it. But the conceptualization of the ground is not the ground. But overall, it doesn't change me being able to say with absolute confidence, Earth's flat, the ground's flat. And they go, oh, there's mountains. Yeah, you're a Dumbo. Earth's flat. That's what I'd say in the simplest of terms. And when you go on to exemplify your understanding of this between you and Brian, I do have nothing but commendation for both of you. This will be cementing these principles in the mind's eye of the audience. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, there's a problem. You're after doing it, and I have to say to you, I'm sorry, but you've both done it. The very thing that people keep doing, and Bev does it himself, is that you're going on to try and prove or claim a horizontal plane. You're not claiming it's horizontal. Horizontal is just its orientation, right? You're claiming you're claiming the Earth is flat, right? Flat is a description. Horizontal and the word plane are not descriptive. They are actually geometric. I know they can be used descriptively, but they're an actual geometric term. Flat is not. Flat is a description. So you don't have to defend anything unless somebody can prove that the use of the term flat is not a correct description for the overall of the Earth. And until someone can do that, because I've heard people say it's a topographical plane, that's a complete contradiction. Because to say it's a topographical plane is saying that it's a plane that has topography, but that's not as good a description as just saying flat. Flat is the best description. It's not a geometric claim, it's a description. The same way as you describe something as being round, but it may not be perfectly round, but it's not oblate, it's not a spheroid.
I got you.
It's more round than
I totally get you. Back to the map example, but even more crude. When you take a map that's rolled up and someone says, go and get that map and unroll it flat. So you get the map, you unroll it, and you put it on the table, and it curls up at the end. So you get 2 bits of weight and put them on the end, right? Now, realistically, in the middle of the map, because when you put the weights down, it wasn't stretched flat. It's all rumpled up in the middle. Now, is anybody going to turn around and go, that map's globe-shaped? Like, what? What are you talking about? No, it's not perfectly flat, but you know, it's flat. That's the best way I can describe what I wanted to achieve, so I could look at it and lay things on it and stuff. Now, the fact that when I put the weights down, it wasn't perfectly stretched flat means that if I lay something on top of it now, I might crease the map. Now, when I then roll it back up and unroll it next time I use it, and that crease is still there, lifting part of it and lowering another part of it, am I going to say it's not rolled out flat? Yeah? That's, what is it? Being pedantic? That's all we're dealing with. When we deal with someone like Bev over this matter, it's called being pedantic.
Well, what will happen is that if you start trying to geometrically have an argument, when he says to you, the earth is not flat, or elevation changes exist, and you start trying to talk about anything else but flat as a description, you lose. He's going to have you immediately, because you will end up having to agree to what he says.
So where people utilize what should not be utilized as a geometric term, but instead, as you keep reiterating, just a description. I'm just describing how furry it is. Well, furry is not a geometric term. Well, the next thing you know, you've been screwed because you've used the word furry. I'm using furry to reiterate the fact that flat is just a descriptive term. Whereas if you're going to use it as a geometric term, you're going to have your ass handed to you by somebody who knows geometry better than you do. Is that what you're saying? I assume it is, Brian.
Yeah. Yes, because you're going to start trying to defend flat as if it's a geometric claim.
Gotcha.
And that's going to make you look stupid, because then you're trying to claim, literally what you would be trying to claim if Bev was there, is that elevation changes don't exist. And they do exist, so you're wrong.
Gotcha. Perfect. That was the conclusion. Unless John's got something to add, which will lead me to say, if there's 70 watching, somebody shared the show, so thank you very much for smashing the share button. If you haven't done so already, you're probably one of the people who clicked on a shared link. So please share the show also. Be nice to get it to 100 people. Last week, it was a struggle to even get close to 100 people watching. This week, let's see if we can get over it. Anyway, let's move on. We've done, 2 housekeeping questions, which is normally all we get through these days before we segue on to the video that we've been covering for a few days now, because it's reasonably lengthy. It's definitely not 15 minutes. Can anyone remember the timestamp we got to, or what we were looking at when it was when we were doing it?
Well, it was around the point where when they were arguing about Roohif was trying to make the horizon a globe again. When after he had said that, remember he said, it's just, it can't be resolved. It's not as if it's going over Earth curve. It's just after that where he's trying to look for the guy, trying to disprove that the guy is at 5-foot elevation height for his camera. And he's trying to now not use angular size by claiming the guy on the beach is 6 foot tall, blah, blah, blah. It's around that point. You see where Roohif has a little kind of photo where he has little measurements, and the horizon is above the person, and you're looking up to the horizon. Remember that part?
I'm actually on the wrong video. I've clicked on my own shared link of the debate that we did critiquing it last week. So I'm just going to have to see if I can scroll my way back up through Skype to find the link to Jeran's video, unless somebody has it to hand, which is unlikely in a pinch. Anyway, the other thing we're going to do, maybe tomorrow, if we get through this today, is Flatsoid did a debate, I believe yesterday, and he dropped me a line on Skype basically saying, can you cover it? So, yes, I'm happy to. Oh, it's the same. I've clicked the same link. Damn it. Well, I'll keep looking. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to cover Flatsoid's video. So if you want to follow along, we will, or I will, because I'm not going to watch it in the meantime. I simply won't get a chance. We'll be covering it as we see it, so to speak. So we'll cover it like we do with these, or this one, if I could ever find it, live. So I'm not going to watch Flatsoid's video, but I do encourage that anybody who wants to follow along, so they can say, I know what's coming, I wonder how I'll react to this, or I wonder what Brian will say when he says this part, then I'd suggest you check it out in the meantime, because we'll probably be covering it tomorrow. So that's on Flatsoid FE. I think that's still the name of the channel, unless anybody corrects me. And it was yesterday's debate video that he did. I think it's this video. Let's just see if I can bring this one up just so I can actually do a proper plug for it. If not, this will be the link that goes out so Flatsoid gets a proper shout while I'm actually promoting him. So this link's going to go by while I'm looking for the Debatism video.
It's in there, Master B. I put it back in Master B. I don't have a timestamp on it, but I put it back in Master B.
Oh, well, perfect. Perfect. So while I'm queuing that up, I can encourage people to go and give Flatsoid's video a like. Like I say, we'll be covering that tomorrow. So yeah, go and check out Flatsoid's video. And hopefully this will actually queue up to the time that we got to. No, it's the same link. Brian.
The one I put in is Nick Quinn versus Roohif.
Yeah, that's my video covering Jeran's video. That's why it says FED 1984 on it.
And do you not have the link in that, linked in the description of that video?
No, someone else will have given it out during the show. I mean, short of
sorry.
Right, then I've got 4 copies of my own video. It's because I put, presumably, FED 1984 after show onto Jeran's thumbnail because I'm lazy, or I've done it while I'm live. so now it's confusing, and I've done it 3 times. You've done it 3 times. Well, there we go. We may never get to this bloody video. We're just going to repeatedly look at 1984 FED. Go ahead.
It's in there now, Nathan. It's in there now.
Is it? But is it? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Thank God. Okay, now hopefully a few people have come back since going to Flatsoids. Let's just round out that proper shout, right? In the chat right now, you can see it going by on the live stream chat now, is Flatsoid's video that we're going to be covering tomorrow. So click on that, go and check out Flatsoid, let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So that's that link out of the way. This video we've covered previously over the last couple of days because it's a fairly long video. It's not your typical 15-minute video that I will get doled out to 10th Man. Our prayers are with you, 10th Man. Shout out to you. He's going through trauma at the moment with his family. Not that I'm going to give any details out, but he's not having a good time of it. And our prayers are with him for certain. Anyway, this particular video, being lengthy, has taken us several days to cover, but we do not train to time, we train to standards. So we will cover it regardless if it takes us a little bit longer. And the link to that is now going by in the live stream chat also. So as you can see now, perfect timing as Flatsoids is off the screen. There's a link to Jeranism's channel. So please go right now. Like, if you're live, 72 people watching. Someone else must have shared. Thank you for sharing the show. Please smash the share button if you haven't done so already. Go to his video right now and let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Hopefully Jeran will do a response someday and share the algorithmic love we're sharing with him now by getting people to go and give him a view and give him a comment, and do the same for me. Put a link to my video. Like anybody else we cover, chance would be a fine thing. But that's the intention. So hopefully we'll get a response out of somebody someday, and they'll put a link to our video, and it'll help us in the algorithm where YouTube offer us no love whatsoever. That's enough of my plug. Hopefully that's given enough time for people to go off to him and leave him a comment and then come back, so they haven't missed any of the live critiquing that we're going to be doing now. Let's see, we're at the 25-minute mark. I'm assuming that's where we got to. Please let me know if this is like skipped on or skipped back.
Not due to curvature.
Yeah, I remember covering this already.
People almost look as big as the boat.
Okay, that's your.
I'm always looking for new ways to expand people's perspective of the world.
Adds immediately. Okay, I think this is roughly where we got to.
When you zoom back,
I got another one. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll do it back and forth. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
When you zoom back out from this, the boat isn't disappearing; it's just no longer resolvable. So you can't make it out. It hasn't gone. When you zoom back out, it's not like it's gone over the curve.
Well, that was a fine coincidence that we happened to get that bit in on this show. That's right, Roofy. Hashtag shit shrinks. No, we definitely covered this already.
Yeah, that's exemplified in the flat Earth resolution loss curve calculator that he thinks is an Earth curve calculator.
Indeed, he did.
Yeah, that's exactly
again,
what that's describing.
atmospheric compression.
Okay. All right. I'll move on a little bit. 1 second. So observer height 5 feet. So this, when you zoom back out, there are some people walking along the beach.
Yeah, we
Right,
covered this.
You over the
5 feet.
and you're
It was
all right. So this is trying to do celestial navigation on a flat Earth.
Here we go.
And basically, your observer's here looking up at the star. He takes an elevation angle. And at the moment, that's, we'll say, 30 degrees.
You're going to need
and
a
that
flat
makes
Earth.
his. Second?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
So
Yeah,
did,
yeah, that-
did Jeran just attempt
Yeah.
to throw out the argument and then bottle it?
No, he attempted to berate you. That's what he did.
No. I heard you're going to need a flat Earth for that. Let's just read that again.
That's an attack on you.
No, that's the argument. What are you talking about, attack on me? He will need a flat Earth for that. That is the argument. It sounded to
Yes,
me
it's
like,
not doing it for
a good reason.
hello. Hear it once from me. It sounded to me like he threw out the argument in the middle of someone else's statement and then decided to not back it. That is to say, bottled it. Let's hear it again. 1 second, everybody.
Angle. And at the moment, that's, we'll say, 30 degrees.
You're going to need a
and
flat
that
Earth.
makes his. Second?
Nothing. Go ahead.
He threw out the argument. That's the end of this discussion. Angle, it's on screen. You can see it. With reference to the what? Horizontal line he's got drawn. Yeah, that's going to need a flat Earth. That's correct. But he hasn't backed it, which tells me either he doesn't understand it fully or just hasn't got the confidence to argue it. In either event, he shouldn't be. He's the moderator. But he's correct. You will need a flat Earth for that. Right. Go ahead.
But that's just a statement of fact. That's just
Yes.
a statement of fact.
Correct.
That's all that is. That's not an argument. He should have been fine in saying it. I don't know why he would baffle a statement of fact.
Yeah, Brian. Or anybody else that wanted to get a word in. Or don't.
And this makes the co-altitude, so the zenith angle, 60 degrees. All right. And to work
I'll say it there as well. You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
out how far away you are over the ground,
How far you are away over the, flat reference to the ground? That's where Brian would say if someone would get one over on me. The horizontal reference plane that you'll be utilising with respect to the ground. Yeah, flat. You're going to need a flat Earth for this.
from the ground position. So here's
GP, ground position. Now, maybe Jeran will pipe up and say, no, that ground position needs to be out in space on a tangent like Toon told me. Let's see if Jeran pipes up for this.
here's where the star is overhead, and here's where you are. To work out how far away you are in celestial navigation, you multiply that by 60 nautical miles. So that's 3,600 nautical miles. All right, so we've got
On a flat plane.
one leg. This is for flat Earth, right? We've got one leg of a triangle.
Yeah, this is all in reference to a flat plane, even Roohif saying it. This is how it's done.
We've got a right angle.
Right, but he just introduced the triangle, which means he's getting ready to invoke the height of the star to prove that the Earth isn't flat using the angle from the star at that fixed height
How does he get the angle to the star?
off a flat plane.
So he's saying, I'm going to use a measurement off a flat plane to the angle and then say that it's not possible on a flat plane. We couldn't have got the angle unless it was a flat plane. This is stupid.
Right, but he's going to use a principle of trigonometry, which celestial navigation is not, to try to apply it to the angle you just took to create a triangle to the star.
I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
We had this
He's getting
discussion in
ready
one
to
of the pre-shows. I was listening Friday night. We were arguing with someone in the Discord panel about not calling it celestial navigation when it's trig and vice versa. And the person, I can't remember who it was was like, well, I just like calling it trig because, and I think it was Adam critiquing the guy saying, no, celestial navigation is celestial navigation. It is an in of itself process that you will perform that has things in commonality, or whatever the word is, with trig. But it isn't trig. That's something else. This is celestial navigation. Now, what you're saying is, have you seen this already, John?
No, I just know the trick. I did it in my kitchen. You know what I mean? I know the trick.
Well, no, that's good because it means I can just say go through it again in preemptive nature, so that when he says it, you can have the props and I can say you called it.
They all go there, don't they?
Hold on, we've got one deck rumpus in you. Hold that thought, John. Go ahead, one deck.
I was just saying they all go down this road. Dave Twangles McKeegan went down this road, trying to bring out that we want to know the heights of the luminary, but we're not doing anything like that in the first place. We don't need to.
Okay, I mean, you're maybe stealing John's thunder. I don't know what part of it you're stealing, but what you're saying is when your celestial navigation process is specifically with reference to the ground position as detailed a moment ago by Roohif, then what you're trying to achieve is in regards to ground positions, not heights of stars. Now, again, I will reiterate that there's a good chance you've just stolen a bit of John's thunder, but we will play this section, and then John will, after he's going to give his prediction so we can get props if he's right, which he probably will be. Go ahead, John.
What he's going to do is use a trigonometric function to give an actual height to the star. He's going to then change the position of measurement and show that the star is at a different height, which would not be and then he'll make the statement that wouldn't be possible on a flat plane.
And we've got an angle. So we can work out how high the star is just using simple trigonometry.
Called it. He started off by saying celestial navigation, and now we've moved on to trig, after getting angles from a flat plane. As Jeran pointed out, you're going to need a flat plane for that.
Cool. But if with this elevation angle of 30 degrees...
That you needed a flat plane to acquire. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't come in earlier. I missed you just before you press play again.
Don't worry.
What Roohif is talking about here is what they do on the globe and call it parallax. They don't do it on the globe. The point is they use that exact process when they're dealing with parallax, giving them a distance to a celestial body. That's the exact process they're using, and they're using a horizontal plane.
Yes.
So they're trying to land us with this nonsense that they do, and try and somehow debunk us with the very thing that they actually do.
Well, their parallax has two problems, doesn't it? It comes with an assumed orbital movement to take the differences, and it comes with a flat plane measurement in the first place. Parallax requires a flat plane measurement. Facts.
Voice. Because it requires it for the measurement, and it requires it for the orbital.
Oh, beautiful! I missed that. Sorry, I always peg it as an assumption. It's usually John driving by me in a Lamborghini. Yes, that's right. The orbital assumption will also require a flat plane. Kudos. Okay, so that didn't take long. We'll continue anyway.
We work out the star is 2,078 nautical miles up. Right? But if I move closer or further away from that star, but I have to maintain that 60 nautical miles per degree, then the star physically has to be a different height. Okay, this is why it doesn't work on flat Earth.
What? We don't assert any height. Yeah. It doesn't work on a globe when utilising celestial navigation because the physical height of the star would have to change, and that doesn't comport with your globe. It doesn't work on a flat Earth. Who's claiming the height? Oh, you gave us the height you say it comes out to when you use the trig to derive the height on a flat plane, and then tell us how your measurement you made, which could only be done for both flat... Oh, it can't be done for globe. You couldn't have got the angle. Nevertheless, that straw man height you gave says... Fails? You say it fails? Why'd you give it us then? Nobody else claimed it. Your opponent certainly didn't. He's not claiming height of stars proves flat Earth. It's just a... What's the word? Oh, yeah, straw man. Go ahead, whoever was trying to get a word in.
Yeah, this very claim, I have video from a couple of the main ballers from some years ago, where they were trying to say that over a horizontal plane, that Polaris has to be 3,000 miles high. I don't know, 3,000 nautical miles, I don't know, based off of two angles from 45 degrees north, right, on a horizontal plane. They spent years.
Say the last bit again, just so the audience follows what you're saying, because that's the most critical bit.
Yeah, based on two angles from 45 degrees north, that they were claiming that Polaris must be 3,000 nautical miles high above a flat plane. That means to measure the angles, they have to pre-assume it's flat. And they're using the latitude and longitude grid, which is a grid that's measured flat.
What they then do is take the exact same angles that they've said don't work on a flat Earth to give you a height you don't claim. And then they don't tell you that, well, those angles won't be measurable when you're on a sphere anymore. But we'll still use the same angles to imply that we've got parallax or orbital motion or whatever they need to infer with these flat plane measurements.
Exactly. And the worst thing is that they spent years promoting this rubbish. Now, I told them you can't do that because as soon as you move to the 46th degree or the 44th degree parallel, you'll get a different angle. And it wasn't until I really reiterated, I really drove it home. I think I made a video or something, but I drove it home. And after I drove it home, suddenly they all changed their tune and started using what was a defense to their rubbish claim as an attack on us, supposedly. So they're using a defense to one of their rubbish claims. Someone on our side, which was me, pointing out to them how what they're saying is geometrically not possible. They use that now as an attack on us somehow. So they're basically taking something that was a rebuttal to them as suddenly an attack on us. That's what they're actually.
Well, it's always been a part of their rhetoric to claim that it's not a flat plane. That's how I was able to call it exactly how it would be done. I've heard myself saying it before when I was a baller.
Yeah.
That's just how the rhetoric works. They confuse triangulation with celestial navigation, and they jump back and forth. And if you don't catch it, it's all to take you away from the angle you just measured off a flat plane.
So did we. If you go back maybe 100 shows, and we're first discussing this, none of us have got the terminology right. So we'll be saying trigonometry when we mean celestial navigation, and vice versa. And often it's what's the other one? Trilateration. When you're measuring distances, it's like we will have called that triangulation, and we will have called a version of it celestial navigation, and all sorts of verbal mistakes that we're making because we've only just come across the information. Not come across it, but we're just getting the terminology slightly wrong. And now people may be unaware of this, that we discuss things after the show, and it did come up. I can't remember how long ago, maybe 6 months or more. And at some point someone stepped in and went, it was probably Quantum Eraser, I have no doubt, in fact, and said, no, you've got to start getting these terminologies right. You can't keep saying trig when you mean celestial navigation, because eventually it'll get down to that fine detail and someone will win an argument with it because you've got the terminology wrong. Don't keep saying trig. Now, it was heartwarming because, those conversations that we have, not necessarily behind the scenes, it might have been on a live show for all I remember, come to fruition when someone like Adam, only last week, has exactly the same conversation with someone on the Discord server. Don't call it trig. But it is trig, isn't it? No, it isn't. It's celestial navigation.
The reason our terminology was wrong, though, is because the citations terminology is wrong. If you go through celestial navigation, they'll do the same thing in the books that we were doing.
Right.
We were the ones that siphoned through it. So I don't think you can hold that against us. And I'm not trying to hold it against Roohif. I'm just saying that is the rhetoric, and that he followed the formula.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to fault anybody. I mean, you've got to go through the mill, or whatever you call it, the term. You got to do the to see how this crap unfolds. So, like earlier in the show, when Arwin starts phrasing things in a way because he's trying to make it work globally, and we're bracing against it and picking it apart, that's a beautiful balance. But in this instance, it's not some balance. It's just that when you find some Joe Normie, who's not some globe-believing asshole, he's just some guy who's writing about celestial navigation and confusing the terminology. And we read that and we do the same. Now, regardless of whether that guy's done it because it puts a globe skew on it, which might be the case, just unlikely, that guy, when he's wrote it, is on a globe. He's a globe believer. He's part of the Western world culture, and therefore that's his religion, whether he knows it or not. Unlikely that he does know it's his religion. He's just adhering to it because that's what he's doing. Therefore, when you get these terminology errors that ultimately, in a fine point debate about the nature of existence when it comes to geography, geology, celestial navigation, and maths, specifically trig, you do need to get your terminology right. That may not seem important when you're just up against some noob, but when you come against somebody that's seemingly knowing their stuff and they call you on one descriptive term that's been used geometrically, they suddenly win just because you didn't realise that, for Brian's sake of example, flat's just a description, perfectly accurate one, and you've used it when describing part of the topology of the land in a geometric term. Suddenly you're losing a debate because of that. Well, yeah, that's life. Get used to it. We're at the tip of the spear. But I mean, in order for Brian, John, Arwin, and myself in this instance to concisely summarise these things, we've had to be battle-scarred and battle-hardened and go through it. Or in John's instance, for the majority of his now capable of rendition description, doing it as a baller himself. You know, hopefully everyone takes the value. I mean, there's 80 people watching still, so that's got to be good. Please share the show. It's a good one, going through the nitty-gritty of how we all get onto a ball just through the very language. Without even trying, you can keep yourself on a ball. It's amazing. Go ahead, Brian.
But, yeah, I just want to say, people have said, I think Huey said, that it's not triangulation either. But if you have a mobile phone and they're going to triangulate your position with your mobile phone using 3 cell towers, then they're using your position in relation to these 3 cell towers, which are around you at
That's
a radius.
trilateration.
No, that's not trilateration. That's triangulation using cell towers. Trilateration involves straight lines. There is no reference to trilateration actually being in existence in reality outside of a claim of a globe with satellites, right? And I've debunked that.
But the principle that they describe in... Hold on. Let me
Yeah.
get my confusion right then. Because the principle that is described for those satellites is the same as you would describe for the cell towers. But they call it trilateration when it's for satellites as opposed to cell towers. But the description's the same, is it not?
No, because what the claim is concerning satellites is that there is microwaves, which is microwaves would be like an invisible, the best way to describe them, so for people mentally who don't know, would be like an invisible laser. So it's like a straight line, where cell towers aren't using microwaves. The claim is that satellites are using microwaves. And these straight line distances that are calculated via the two-way speed of light calculation, right, supposedly tell the receiver where it is. Now, that's wrong. Even if we lived on a globe, that wouldn't work. None of it works. But that's beside the point. The point is that trilateration, that's the only example I know of where they're claiming such a thing as trilateration. Because you could be used if you know an exact distance to someone, but you can't be used for navigation, let's just say, right? But triangulation is different. They're not using microwaves. They're using lower frequency waves than microwaves. So they're using a bounce timing thing rather than giving a receiver a time based off of a signal that's sent one way. See, trilateration, if you're thinking about satellites, it's a one-way signal. There's no bounce coming back. It's only the receiver receives, the sender sends, the receiver receives. There's no information going back to the sender, back to the satellite. That's not happening. Whereas triangulation, there is information coming back based off of a bounce. So they're using bounce timing to determine where you are, where your mobile phone is in relation to these 3 towers, right? Now, if you take those 3 circles of equal altitude and where they intersect, you take the center of those 3 circles and you draw a straight line between those centers, then that creates a triangle, and you are right then at the center of wherever that you're at the middle of that triangle, basically.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. In fact, did somebody smash the super chat while I was listening to Brian and his extremely concise description of trilateration versus triangulation? Let's just have a little look. No, I didn't miss a super chat. Okay, so stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!